Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 914 for the 12th of April, 2026. Richard Saunders coming to you from Sydney, Australia. In the last week, it's been pleasant weather, if a little warm, and still a bit humid. But I'm sure you, like me, was glued to the television yesterday to see the return of Artemis II and her crew. Exciting stuff, that's 6 minutes of terror, as they call it. Also in the last week, the Secretary of Australian Skeptics, Lara Benham, and I went along to the Royal Easter Show here in Sydney, Australia. It's like a giant county fair. Giant is an understatement. It's huge. And at one stage, we wandered into the poultry exhibit, or the display of ducks and geese and chickens and all sorts of things from around New South Wales.
It's so impressive.
Coming up on this week's show, we look to the stars, to the skies, or do we? In fact, I can hear an aircraft going over the studio now, and my little indicator here, my little app says it's coming from New Zealand, bound for Sydney. Not bound for Melbourne, which in 1966 something appears was. This is referring again to the famous Westall UFO case of 1966. I covered this a few weeks ago on the Skeptic Zone in relation to people's memories and how fragile memory can be. Well, in the past week I appeared on the Australian television program Australian Story, which is a national program, expressing some opinions about the case in general and speculating what the object seen might have been. This has caused pandemonium in certain circles of the UFO community, who of course regard skeptics as nefarious, evil, closed-minded agents of disinformation, stupid, and all those and more have been expressed in the comment section of the YouTube channel of ABC Television. Now, I'm going to link to that in this week's show notes. I invite you to have a look at the program if you haven't seen it. And if you think I was a goose, call me a goose. If you think I made some good points, then that's great. And you can comment or not, as is your wish. But at the top of the show, we're going to read out, with the help of Maynard, we're going to be reading out some of the more, shall we say, interesting comments left on that page. After that, I wish you'd keep listening. I really do, because it's, for crying out loud, it's Kat McLeod, and Kat will be looking at wishes. This week, she will take a look at the tradition of wishing, a topic we have not covered on the Skeptic Zone before, although we have covered things that require wishful thinking, like manifesting. After that, it's Kat's fellow Canadian, Adrienne Hill from Skookum Studios in Calgary, Canada, with this week's newsletter, written by our news editor, Dee, over at Australian Skeptics. Then to round off the show, we once more gazed to the heavens in the past, in the years 1973, 1966, 1983, 1989, 1977, to look for references to NASA and UFOs. And many people think that NASA is an evil Satan cult or a disinformation office, or, again, and I've mentioned this on the show before, it's gobsmacking to see the people who are involved in the UFO flat earth industry putting out their videos saying the Artemis II was faked and NASA is faking it all. But before we get stuck into this week's episode, don't forget that the Australian Skeptics, through the generosity of the Traynor Foundation to promote the development of critical thinking skills in young people, are offering a series of scholarships to the upcoming Nauticon, featuring the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe Rogues with many special guests, including Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki. There are 5 scholarships on offer, valued at $350, and 20 partial scholarships valued at $200. Now, these are available for secondary and tertiary students. If you're one and you want to come to Noticon, or you know a secondary or tertiary student who wants to come to Noticon, let them know. Head to skeptics.com.au, and right on the front page there is a link for the applications. Noticon plus Skepticon 2026 in Sydney. It's all happening on the 23rd to the 25th of July. A big shout out to those lucky people around Australia who already are snuggling into their electric blankets. Do you remember electric blankets? I had one when I was a kid. It was always a happy memory for me. Anyway, with that thought, and while I run downstairs and have a nice buttery bagel with some salmon, I hope you enjoy this week's episode of The Skeptic Zone. Now, some of you in Australia may have seen me on the TV the other night, Monday night, talking about the Westall UFO case from 1966. I was there to, no surprises, offer a skeptical point of view, dare I say. A brief overview of the case is that it was reported that many school children and some teachers saw a UFO, an unidentified flying object, over Westall High School in Melbourne in 1966. The story has grown in the popular culture over the last 60 years, and just not long ago, and within the last week, it was actually the 60th anniversary of this event, which prompted the half-hour documentary on ABC TV. Now, I'll link to the documentary in this week's show notes, and I hope you'll take half an hour out to view it and see what you think. Now, I was interviewed for quite a while and gave many answers and opinions and bits of information, and I don't think I was unfairly edited into the final version. To be blunt, it's still not really known for sure what happened that day. It's widely suspected it was some kind of balloon, be that weather balloon or a more sophisticated balloon used at the time for tracking or analysing atomic radiation in the atmosphere. If pressed, I would probably tend to favour the high-altitude atomic testing balloon, simply because other factors in the story might more or less match that theory, including reports of military people turning up at the school. However, the fact is, the final answer is still a mystery. But what I thought I would do with the help of Maynard is read out some of the comments on the YouTube page left by viewers of the show.
At GeForce for All, if it was a damn balloon, then every witness would have said they saw a damn balloon. I'm sick of these so-called scientists telling everyone that they're stupid.
My reply to that was, which so-called scientist said they were all stupid? Although I see some less than sympathetic comments here saying something along those lines. That's just alluding to the fact that many comments are very disparaging of the children involved at the time, which is very unfair.
At Priscilla Bird 518. I believe that the skeptic is a disinformation agent. And at Maynard right here, I couldn't believe you more. At Priscilla Bird 518. This guy's so full of disinformation, it's coming out of his ear.
My reply to that was, you believe? I try my best to provide a rational point of view. What is your evidence that I'm a disinformation agent? If I am, my paychecks are missing in the mail.
And I'll have to get my all caps voice on for this one. At MGH926. These are demons masquerading as extraterrestrial. That is the answer. The best answer is... I'll change to my lower caps voice. Only faith in Jesus and his saving grace will save you from the demonic disclosure coming soon, which they call aliens disclosure.
My reply: if given a choice between demons playing dress-up or actual extraterrestrials, I would pick the extraterrestrials. They went on to say...
Oh, same person again, at MGH926, using my lowercase voice for this person this time. The brainwashing of the masses, these interdimensional, which means they are not extraplanetary, their so-called craft does not obey the laws of known physics, therefore they are demons in disguise. Well, I got to agree with Fiddleista23 here. Fiddleista23. The skeptic guy is so infuriating, patronising and stupid in his complete dismissal of over 300 people, all obviously having seen a bloody flying saucer. I cannot stand these arrogant idiots.
My reply to that: complete dismissal? I stated quite clearly, obviously, something happened. This does not mean we necessarily jump to the conclusion it was aliens and dismiss other candidates.
This is Sandbell6951. With regards to the skeptic, he would struggle to make a distinction between a vagina and a penis in front of his face. Well, look, I'll tell you about the Christmas play some other time. Everyone knows what a balloon looks like and how it behaves since age 2. By the way, did anyone think of showing the Kibble Polaroid to the witnesses to get their reaction?
My reply: oh yes, personal insults always help give your argument more weight.
At completed-YouTube, I'm glad they added the weather balloon ape after the actual witness descriptions to show just how absolutely ludicrous it is for someone to come to the conclusion from the original descriptions.
My reply: let me get this clear. You are calling me an ape. You are debasing yourself by personal insults because I mentioned one of the possibilities?
And completed YouTube once again. Let me get this clear. Using Occam's razor, you arrived at weather balloon after people described a metallic, saucer-shaped object capable of sudden acceleration? Huh?
My reply: so, you are calling me an ape. Nice. You need to watch the show again to see I said it was a likely possibility, not that it was a weather balloon, and I did not discount candidates. Occam's razor is a guide only, but if using insulting terms to carry your argument is your thing, then good luck. I await your apology.
I'm on the same page with you at Mickey5758. That skeptic dude is a dumbass.
My reply: could you elaborate on your argument a little bit more, please?
At Richard Brown 5417. Gotta love the mansplaining by the man in the black shirt, Mr. Saunders.
My reply: I was putting forward ideas and possible explanations to consider as I was invited to do so. How does your accusing me of mansplaining advance your point, whatever it is? Would you also use that pejorative term for the other guests in the documentary, all of whom were invited and had a point of view to express?
And we have at Shimemin. Was that Richard? I cannot think of anything worse than these poor people having their stories co-opted by the Skeptic Society. I hope he is alive long enough to see disclosure. As for these people, you are heard. You are believed. The Richards of the world will never understand how this changed you, not just in that moment, but in every moment for the rest of your lives since. Well done to you for speaking your truths.
My reply: I'm struggling to follow your reasoning here. I stated quite clearly on the show that obviously something happened. I don't doubt for one moment something happened. Many lives have been changed by whatever happened. These people deserve to be heard, of course. I also put forward a number of possibilities, including the atomic testing program of the time, which I would consider to be a strong candidate. I also said on the program that if it was aliens, then so be it. As for disclosure, we've all been waiting for over 80 years.
Romlin, 99. At 16:10 in this show, there is something strange about Richard Saunders' accent. He sounds like an American who is trying to speak like an Australian. I think he's a paid skeptic whose job it is to cast doubt on credible witness accounts, specifically UFO, UAP witness incidents. If some people question the validity of the eyewitness's account, then this paid skeptic has done his job.
My reply: I have lived in Germany and I spent much time in the USA, so yeah, I guess that would affect my accent. I'm an Aussie. Do you have evidence that I am, quote, a paid skeptic whose job is to cast doubt on credible witness accounts, end quote? Australian Skeptics is a volunteer organisation, and I have given over 25 years of unpaid work. Although I do make a modest income from my podcast, it is not enough to pay all the bills. Questioning the validity of eyewitness accounts is a normal procedure in science and in courts of law. It does not mean, therefore, the account must be wrong. It simply acknowledges the fragility of human memory. Suggesting without cause that I am acting maliciously or in bad faith is a little bit mean-spirited, I think.
Oh, wow. Art thou not entertained? Richard Saunders is just scared. That's why he's a skeptic. Public service announcement. There are over 4 trillion, that's a 4 with lots of zeros after it, galaxies in the known, that was my upper caps voice, lower caps now, universe. Each galaxy has around 30 billion stars, and most of those stars have planets orbiting them. You really think Earth is the only place with life? Be serious.
My reply: what exactly am I scared of? Not sure I understand. If aliens visited Westall, then why would I be scared? Can you tell me? Can you point to anywhere in all the published reports I have written, the TV and radio interviews I have done for 25 years, that I have said that I am somehow scared? Can you show me anywhere I have said the Earth is the only place with life?
At Brendan-P4G. Seriously? To the debunkers and skeptics, get a better narrative than your usual weather balloon theory. It's been way past its use-by date by about, uppercase voice, 80 years ago. Emoji, wackety thing, and an alien emoji. Look, you people, not once did anyone use the aubergine emoji, and I'm very disappointed by that. This is exactly the case it should be used if you're that disgusted.
My reply: because sometimes it really is just a weather balloon. That is not to say in this case it definitely was. However, it is simply one possibility we cannot discount. Now, I must say, amongst all the back and forth, and you can look at that yourself, and I encourage you to do so. And if you want to chip in, please do. And if you want to defend my point of view, if you happen to agree with it, please do. Or if you want to call me out, it's your right, of course. But yes, amongst all the calling me silly names and sometimes what I would consider to be weak arguments, there were people on the side of, dare I say, science and reason. And Little Wink 7941 is a good example. And they say, this is a typical example of a mass witness UFO sighting. In daylight, clear sky, multiple witnesses from a relatively large group of relatively reliable persons. Essentially common account extending over some time. Daylight discs exhibiting random ballistic motion, and a nearby landing in trees. Also reported a flight of small aircraft which were linked to the UFOs in some way. As is usual with this event, the reported observations vary widely, as do drawings post-event. Only 2 proper observers appear to have had a camera. A Polaroid type produced one image of a obviously fake, shiny, roundish object held close to the camera by throwing, then filming against a clear sky and presented as a large object at a distance. A teacher was said to have a second camera and several images were taken. These, of course, have mysteriously disappeared. No photographs of any object with school buildings and excited pupils for reference was taken. No images of the aircraft. No teacher present thought to get the children to draw the objects, or write of their experience as it was happening. No one present thought to get some of the children to measure the angle of inclination on a known baseline, thus establishing actual distance, or to measure angle or separation across one to get the size estimation. No one thought to identify any, quote, military personnel, end quote, who came to examine the site of the landing. The school authorities apparently forbade any disclosure of the incident, of course, so all the subsequent media attention must have come as a shock. All in all, this is clearly a case of mistaken perceptions of probably aircraft, which were intermittently seen as what they were and sometimes not, hence their sudden appearance. The one true mystery is why the Air Force proposed such a ludicrous explanation as a weather balloon, but given that this will have been dealt with at a low level of authority by some junior officer, then one excuse is as good as another. Like all good UFO reports, the more you look, the less there is to see. Yes, many good points there. And although we don't write off the weather balloon, the high-altitude atomic testing sort of, as I've been saying, sort of ticks more boxes. But again, ultimately, we still don't know. The Westall UFO case on Australian Story on ABC television, and you can watch that for yourself with a link in this week's show notes on YouTube. Whatever happened to those children, they deserve a hearing. And again, I invite you, if you so desire, to leave a comment.
G'day, Dr. Carl here, letting you know that I will be appearing at NOTACon 2026 from July 23rd to the 25th at the Sydney Masonic Centre. What is a NOTACon? Well, it's not a convention, but it sort of is, sort-of-ish, kinda. It's an interactive festival of ideas and games and audience participation by the Australian skeptics and the whole crew from the Skeptics Guide to the Universe, which is the #1 skeptical podcast from the USA. The tickets are selling fast, with some types having already sold out. So jump onto notacon.com or skeptics.com.au to find out more and book your place while you still can. Bring your brain, bring your mates, and I'll see you there. Peace, love, mung beans. Bye.
For crying out loud. It's Kat McLeod. When you wish upon a star. Oh, hello. This is Kat McLeod, coming to you from latitude 53.5-ish in the Northern Hemisphere. In these trying times, I often find myself wishing things could be different. So I ask, dear listener, have you ever made a wish? I'm willing to bet you have. Wishes are the most universal form of expressing one's desires. Most people were introduced to the concept of wishing at a very early age, when we're taught to make a wish when we blow out the candles on our birthday cake. There's so many other ways that humans make wishes. Stars are popular. You can make a wish on the first star you see in the night sky, or on a shooting or falling star, which is actually a meteor, since stars don't really fall from the sky and can't get permits to shoot guns. Anyway, you can break a wishbone, blow on a fallen eyelash, wish as you pick up a dropped glove or penny. I wonder if that will change to a new currency in the future, seeing that most countries are phasing out their pennies. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. You can make a wish if you see 11:11 on a clock, throw coins in a fountain or wishing well, blow the seeds off a dandelion, see a ladybug, or catch a unicorn or leprechaun. If you rub a lamp and release a genie, supposedly they can grant wishes as well. In 19th century Britain, if you saw a white horse in a field on your travels and made a wish, it was said to come true. So I wondered, what is the history behind some of these wish traditions? I suppose we blow out the candles to avoid a waxy mess ruining a perfectly good cake, although that practice does spread a lot of germs. A 2017 study looked at the spread of bacteria on a birthday cake with blown-out candles. What they found was disgusting. The icing on a cake in which the candles were blown out showed approximately 1,400% more bacteria than the icing on a cake without candles. There are many traditions and folklore surrounding wishing on stars, mainly because of wanting a connection to the universe or heavens. In some Asian cultures, falling or shooting stars are omens of impending life changes, so people wish on them, hoping to influence the change to be a positive one. However, in the ancient cultures of Mesopotamia, a shooting star almost always meant a bad omen. In Greek mythology, shooting stars were the result of Zeus throwing stones down from the heavens to earth when he was angry. The practice of breaking wishbones dates back to ancient times, particularly among the Etruscans, which is modern-day Tuscany. They believed that birds, especially chickens, had prophetic powers. After slaughtering a chicken, they would dry the wishbone in the sun and stroke it while making wishes, hoping to gain some of the bird's divine qualities. The Romans adopted this practice, but due to the limited number of wishbones available, they began breaking them to allow more people to participate in the ritual of making wishes. This custom eventually spread to England, where it was further popularized and adapted to include turkey wishbones during Thanksgiving celebrations in North America. According to the Times of India, blowing on an eyelash dates back to a time when it was believed that the devil gained power over humans by collecting their hair. So it's imperative to blow away the hair before the devil can reach you. I've suspected my vacuum of being demonic in the past, so there may be actually something to this. Several versions of eyelash wishing existed in 18th century Britain and Ireland. For example, folklore recorded in Shropshire, England instructs that, quote, if an eyelash comes out, put it on the back of the hand, wish and throw it over the shoulder. If it leaves the hand, the wish will come true, end quote. Another version, this one passed among Cornish schoolgirls, reports a loose eyelash must be placed on the tip of the nose or the back of the hand. If it's successfully blown off the surface, the accompanying wish will materialize. The tradition of tossing coins in a fountain began centuries ago. In Norse and Celtic Europe, springs and wells were believed to be inhabited by deities or guardian spirits. Offerings, often jewelry, weapons, or other valuables, were placed in these waters to gain the favor of these supernatural beings. Archaeological excavations have uncovered hundreds of coins and offerings from centuries ago. The Romans similarly believed water spirits could grant favors in exchange for small sacrifices. They tossed coins into sacred springs as offerings to water deities like Coventina. As Christianity spread across Europe, many pagan water shrines were converted to Christian wishing wells, where coins were thrown to honor saints instead of water gods. The tradition of making wishes on dandelions dates back centuries and through various cultures. It is believed to have originated in ancient Greece, where dandelion flowers were associated with the goddess Artemis, who was often depicted with a crown of dandelions. The Greeks believed that blowing on the dandelion seed heads and making a wish would carry their desires to the gods. Today, many people still enjoy the simple act of making a wish and blowing the fluffy seed heads of dandelions into the wind. I just wish that my garden could be free of dandelions. I wonder, dear listener, have any of your wishes ever come true? The fact that my health hasn't been restored, and neither Jason Momoa nor Keanu Reeves are aware that I exist, are evidence that mine never do. Which begs the question, why do we continue to wish if our wishes don't come true? Wishes actually serve a purpose, even though they never seem to be fulfilled. They provide hope in difficult times. Wishing is an expression of our longings and desires. It can help you tune into your goals and what you value most in life. It may also be a cultural tradition. But most of all, wishes offer up hope that something good could be just about to happen. And it helps maintain optimism. So, sorry. Since I'm only the skeptical fairy godmother angel of the internet's stunt double in training, I can't make any of your wishes come true. Yet. However, if you enjoy psychoanalysis, you can explore Freud's wish fulfillment theory. It's controversial, but can be interesting. Wishing you all the best for your week ahead. Signing off from Kitty Corner Studios, this is Kat McLeod.
Hello everyone, this is Adrienne Hill, here in Skookum Studios in Calgary, Canada. And I'm going to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics Newsletter. This is newsletter number 244. Now, don't forget, you can sign up to this newsletter at skeptics.com.au and get the full report, complete with all the links every other week, right into your inbox. But now, let's see what our news editor Dee has for us this time. Hi all, says Dee. In the news this fortnight, there's a few longer pieces of media to sink your teeth into, particularly recommending The Matter of Facts on ABC, an episodic series on the overlaps of politics and misinformation. If this year could be colored under a particular category of skeptical wooism, aliens would surely fit the bill. Hopping on the bandwagon after a presidential slip of the tongue, many journalists and commentators have surrounded the politics of extraterrestrials. These fads ebb and flow. Personally, I can't wait till the dial falls back on hollow earth reptoids again. We at the Australian Skeptics have teamed up with the Skeptics Guide to the Universe to bring you Nauticon, Skepticon, Life, the Universe, and Everything, our 42nd annual conference. Tickets are on sale. Continue on for more information. In the meantime, read on. Dee. Okay, Dee, I'll do just that. Nominations for the 2026 Bent Spoon are still open. If you have a burning nomination for the perpetrator of the most preposterous piece of paranormal or pseudoscientific piffle, you can forward them to our nomination page. Nominations should be for events, activities, or claims that have occurred in Australia or by Australians. The latest nomination is for yet another performer who claims to get messages from the dead. Those dead just can't stay dead, it seems. The winner will be announced at Nauticon Skepticon in July. The Matter of Facts. That's a 3-part ABC program on fake news and misinformation. Quote, Hamish MacDonald wants to know what happens if we lose our faith in facts, end quote. This is definitely worth a watch. Meanwhile, an Australian Senate hearing into misinformation and disinformation had first-hand experience of the problem. AI was used to generate fake content in some submissions to the very inquiry investigating misinformation. New York City's budget, psychics. Woo-woo on the cheap. Psychic readings in New York to find out if you're about to get a promotion at work or if love is in the stars can cost, gulp, $250, which is the lower end of what New York City's most sought-after psychics are charging nowadays. Sometimes they go as high as $500 per hour, and I'm guessing that's US dollars. Ouch. Customers are turning to lower-cost versions. Coffee cups, lip prints, and TikTok sessions. Oh my. I'm thinking I'm in the wrong job. Australia's UFO sighting at Westall High says it's time for answers. This is an ABC Australian story on the 1960s Westall UFO case, specifically about the school kids who witnessed it. And it features our very own Richard Saunders for a bit of skeptical input. Remember, we would like you to add your comments to the YouTube video after watching it. Now be polite and be reasonable. Measles complacency and downplaying. Because large measles epidemics and their complications were last seen 50 or more years ago, almost all parents of children today have no idea about measles. And the reason we have forgotten about what measles can do to children is that we nearly eradicated it. Also, Lyme disease's days are numbered. One of the worst and a commonly contracted bacterial infection where ticks are present, Lyme disease, has a vaccine candidate that is nearly 70% effective. These promising results could spell the eventual end of the strain as a whole. Desi Freeman put sovereign citizens in the spotlight. Since Desi Freeman's manhunt in Victoria began over 7 months ago, and for those who don't know, he killed 2 policemen last year, sovereign citizens have received a lot of attention. This is a culture of those who consistently deny the validity of law and the social contract, and they met his story with a combination of disbelief and conspiracy. Nauticon tickets are available. For this year's conference, we are partnering with the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe to bring you Nauticon Skepticon, Life, the Universe, and Everything. And it will be held at the Sydney Masonic Centre for 3 days of skeptical excellence. The dates are Thursday, July 23rd through Saturday, July 25th. And a link can be found at skepticzone.tv. Items of interest. Silly story of the week. Bigfoot spotted in Ohio 8 times in 5 days. There was a surge in Bigfoot sightings. Sasquatch hunters are on the lookout for a terrifying 8-foot humanoid. And Shaquille O'Neal has joined the prowl. Dope. Story of the week. J.D. Vance believes aliens are demons. Continuing the U.S. administration's derangement on the topic of UFOs and extraterrestrials, Vice President J.D. Vance admits he's been obsessed with aliens and believes them to be demons. You'd think 2 of the most powerful people in the world would be able to present some real evidence of ETs if there were any. And UFO secrets might leave the world unglued. Now, this probably says more about the sort of people they let be congressmen than anything tangible on UFOs. He's seen it, but can't talk about it. Unglued, whatever that actually means, might apply to the congressman. Well, that's all for today's newsletter. and I keep thinking that I've run out of Canadian words and phrases to end this newsletter, which some may recall started because Richard visited us in Calgary to speak at the Western Canadian Reason Conference, or We Can Reason, when my husband used the word skookum to describe a sturdy railing on a hiking trail in Banff National Park. And thus Skookum Studios was born. But thanks to friend of the show, the well-known skeptic, otherwise known as Rob Palmer, I have another word. Hydro. Rob reached out to me after watching a show set in Toronto, Canada, where they talked about household utilities and called it hydro. He thought they meant the water bill and asked if this was a typical Canadian thing. But surprisingly, it does not refer to household water usage. It is short for hydroelectric power. British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec rely on it heavily. And as is typical of people, they don't want to say, "My hydroelectric bill this month was incredibly high," so they shorten it to hydro. And I have no idea why they didn't just say electricity bill. Less syllables, maybe? Oh, and speaking of the We Can Reason conference, it is only 3 weeks away. A sampling of the great speakers includes Seth Andrews, Janice Selby, and Dr. Christopher Labos. And I will be giving a talk too, so I hope to see you there. A link is in the show notes. Until next time, this is Adrienne Hill signing off from Skookum Studios in Calgary, Canada.
Once again to head back to those archives from around the world, but especially the digital archives at TROVE at trove.nla.gov.au, the online resource from the Australian Government and the National Library of Australia. Digitised newspapers, reports, gazettes, periodicals, magazines, brochures, shopping lists, diaries, who knows? So much. And we regularly visit this wonderful archive to see what we can find of interest to skeptically minded people. And in light of the recent wonderful voyage of Artemis 2 and the pictures which are just mind-blowing, fantastic pictures, I thought we'd look up a bit of a tangent here because I've seen people online complaining that it's all fake. NASA, once again, those naughty people at NASA are faking space exploration and videos. So I thought, all right, I'm going to look up terms. I'm going to look up the terms NASA and UFO. And I see the returns are varied. Yeah, interesting returns. Okay, let's have a look. The first return I've got here is from the Canberra Times, dated the 20th of October, 1973. NASA man backs biblical UFO. And at the top of the article here, which isn't very long, there's a sketch of a craft of some description. It looks like an upside-down spinning top on legs. And the caption says, "A sketch of a possible spacecraft described in the Old Testament and studied by a NASA engineer." And that's accredited to Australian Associated Press and Associated Press Cable Picture. Huntsville, Alabama, Friday, Australian Associated Press. An engineer who helped develop Skylab, the space shuttle and the Saturn V rocket, says he believed beings from outer space landed on Earth 2,600 years ago using equipment more advanced than anything man can have within the next 20 years. Odd sort of time frame. During 18 months of working in his spare time, Mr. Joseph Blumrich said he had applied space technology to Old Testament text of Ezekiel and came up with engineering drawings of what a craft described by the Hebrew prophet looked like and how it moved about. In Chapter 1, Ezekiel speaks at length about the structure. He said, "It just so happens that I have myself designed such things here." Using mathematical formulas, he had been able to determine that the craft was similar to a child's spinning top. Concave on the bottom with a crew compartment above. You would think they would get dizzy. He believes it was used as a shuttle vehicle between Earth and an orbiting mothership. Well, there you go. Extraordinary. And once more from the Canberra Times, this time dated the 12th of December, 1966. And 1966 was the same year as the Westall UFO incident. UFO was a Royal Australian Air Force aircraft. Canberra's latest unidentified flying object, which excited hundreds of people last night, turned out to be a Royal Australian Air Force aircraft taking part in tracking operations at Timbimbilla Tracking Station. Early last night, the aircraft began swinging in a wide arc across the southern western Canberra sky, its twin identification lights merging into one red tinted glow. Worried residents rang Royal Australian Air Force Fairburn, actually it's just written as RAAF or RAF, Fairburn, and the Canberra Times reporting the phenomenon and asking for explanations while the mysterious light continued on its steady path. Hours later, a weary RAF-based switch girl was still explaining. Engineers at Tinbimbilla were testing their tracking equipment by fixing on a radio beam from the aircraft on the same frequency as that to be used soon by an American space vehicle, which Timbimbilla will track. Now, what's curious here is I don't see the word NASA in the story. Oh well, close enough. And we're on a roll with the Canberra Times here. The next story comes from 1983, from the 16th of January. Victorians report a UFO. Melbourne. An unidentified flying object was reported crossing the sky above Victoria shortly after 6 p.m. on Friday, according to a Federal Department of Transport spokesman. Sightings came from southeastern Melbourne suburbs, Moorabbin Airport, southeast of Melbourne, and Shepparton, 180 kilometres to the north. The department spokesman said the object was sighted in the northeastern sky. And I'll break in here briefly to say that if you hear any strange noises in the background, it's not an alien from a UFO. Well, I don't know, maybe it is. It's Henrietta the cat, who has decided to come up here and sit on the studio table. Haven't you? You want to go in a UFO? Leave that alone. Just have a rest. An air traffic controller at Moorabbin Airport reported the object as being, quote, bright silver, end quote, at first, but changing colour to green and red as it headed further north. A spokesman for the federal government committee monitoring space objects said there was, quote, little chance, end quote. The object was the Russian satellite Cosmos, which passes over Australia 4 times a day. The satellite was scheduled to pass over South Australia and Queensland at 6:30 p.m, but should not have been visible from Victoria. The government is confident that if there was any change in the Cosmos orbit, the United States would notify Australia, he said. Calls reporting sightings began soon after 6 p.m. Melbourne Airport Flight Service Officer Mr. Joe White said, "I was sitting at my flight service console and I just saw it in the background out of the window. It was heading downwards at a steep angle, about 80 degrees, but disappeared from sight before it reached the ground. It was bright green and had a tail of light behind it which was also a green colour." The senior operations controller at Tullamarine Airport, Mr. Brian Whiteley, said the object did not show up on radar screens and a check confirmed that no aircraft were missing. "We contacted the RAF and have reported it as an unidentified flying object." An officer at Tinbimbilla Deep Space Communications Centre in Canberra said that no NASA station around the world had reported any satellite coming down. The president of the Victorian UFO Research Society, Mrs. Judith McGee, said reports of sightings died down yesterday and she felt it had been the Cosmos satellite. And here's one, again from the Canberra Times, and this is dated the 12th of July, 1989, and it concerns crop circles, which were a thing once. The late 80s to stretching into the mid-2000s, I think, they used to be a thing. Let's see what this report says. Crops have unfamiliar ring. London. A series of circles flattening crops in fields across southern England could be the work of an unexplained intelligence, it was alleged on Monday night. 11 of the swirling shapes were reported in Hampshire and Wiltshire on Sunday, and 2 men investigating them claim there have been 170 so far this year. Local government official Colin Andrews said the phenomena could be linked with the 1987 death of a Harrier jump jet pilot whose body was found near a group of circles in Wiltshire after he fell from his plane. He said the pilot could have crossed a high-energy beam, which may have caused the shapes. Mr. Andrews' partner, retired NASA radar expert Pat Delgado. Are you right there? Are you finding this? She's snoring. Are you finding this boring? Do you want to go in a UFO? All right. Where was I? Retired NASA radar expert Pat Delgado said, "There must be some force field manipulated by some unexplained intelligence." He found 3 of the circles in 1981 and 110 were reported last year, appearing at random in a 6.5 kilometre wide band running from Alfriston, East Sussex, to Warminster, Wiltshire. Mr. Delgado said he had warned the Ministry of Agriculture, which thought the shapes could be caused by small whirlwinds or farmers' fertilizers, that cereal crops within the rings should not be used for human consumption. There was evidence the circles affected insects, he claimed. A group of French UFO enthusiasts from a society called Lights in the Night travelled to Winchester on Monday to examine the rings. The Ministry of Defence said it could not comment. Now that story rings a bell. I might have read that years ago. I'm not sure. It seems oddly familiar. We have a brief story here from the Papua New Guinea Post-Courier, dated the 29th of December 1977. No to UFO search. Washington, Wednesday, Australian Associated Press. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, has refused to start an extensive investigation of flying saucers, also known as unidentified flying objects or UFOs. The study had been requested by Frank Press, the president's scientific advisor, who said American public interest in UFOs had been aroused again by recent space films. NASA Administrator Robert Frosch, in a letter made public there, told Mr. Press that it would be wasteful and probably unproductive to resume the kind of large-scale flying saucer chase the Air Force carried out for a number of years until 1969. So that would have been during the Jimmy Carter administration. And of course that would have been spurred on by the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And after that movie was released, there was a huge spike in people claiming to see spaceships or being abducted and so on. And indeed, I have switched over to Google Newspapers and a report here on the 28th of December 1977 from the Evening Independent. And this newspaper is from St. Petersburg, Florida. Under the large heading UFOs, Space Agency turns down White House request for investigation. Washington, Associated Press. The nation's space agency has turned down a White House request to reopen a government probe into unidentified flying objects because it says there is no tangible evidence on which to base a study. Such a probe would be, quote, wasteful and probably unproductive, end quote. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration said in a letter to President Carter's science advisor, Dr. Frank Press. But NASA Administrator Robert Frosch, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly because Frosch is the German word for frog, however, said his agency stands ready to examine any bona fide physical evidence from credible sources. Quote, if some new element of hard evidence is brought to our attention, it would be entirely appropriate for a NASA laboratory to analyze and report upon an otherwise unexplained organic or inorganic sample, end quote, Frosch said in a letter sent last week. Press said he had accepted NASA's conclusions and would not pursue the matter further. The science advisor last July asked NASA to become the government's focal point for a, quote, national revival, end quote, of interest in reports of UFO sightings. He recommended the agency set up a panel of inquiry to take up where the Air Force left off in 1969 when it closed its UFO investigation, Project Blue Book. And that was a TV show in the 1970s I used to watch when I was a kid. After 22 years of study and considerable expense, the Air Force concluded that, in the absence of significant findings, continuation of the project was unwarranted. Press said in July that his office was receiving an increase in letters, mostly from young people, asking about UFOs. He assigned NASA the task of answering them, saying his staff was too small. Many of the recent letters, averaging 2 or 3 a day, had been inspired by the popular new UFO movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There we go. Several demanded that Carter make good on a campaign promise that if there were any secrets about UFOs, he would flush them out. Good heavens, history's repeating itself. Didn't President Trump say a month or 2 back that he would release all the UFO files or something like that? Carter reported in 1973, while governor of Georgia, that several years earlier he had seen a UFO in the form of a glowing light in the night sky over his house. And of course you can see a lot more about that in the splendid documentary, The UFO Movie They Don't Want You to See by Brian Dunning, and that's free to view in many places, including YouTube. Frosch wrote Press that a NASA technical group had carefully considered the UFO request. Quote, I do not feel that we would mount a search effort without a better starting point than we have been able to identify thus far, end quote, he added. Quote, there is an absence of tangible or physical evidence available for thorough laboratory analysis, end quote, he said. Quote, I would therefore propose that NASA make no steps to establish a research activity in this area or to convene a symposium on the subject, end quote. Frosch said the action does not indicate that NASA, quote, has come to any conclusion about these phenomena as such. Institutionally, we retain an open mind, a keen sense of scientific curiosity, and a willingness to analyze technical problems within our capability, end quote. Stanton F. Friedman, a nuclear physicist and lecturer on UFOs, called the NASA action, quote, incredible, end quote. Quote, I'm at a loss to understand the ignorance of NASA not to pursue the study of UFOs, end quote, he said. Quote, there have been over 60,000 reported UFO sightings, and certainly some of these would be worthy of computer analysis, end quote. And Stanton Friedman, I think he's no longer with us, was certainly a noted UFO proponent, as in aliens are here. Well, there we go. Mostly from Australia, and a bit there from the United States, from Florida, looking into the keywords of UFO and NASA. And again, this was inspired this week by the stunning pictures and the wonderful coverage of Artemis 2 as it went to the far side of the moon, and what spectacular photographs of the dark side, the far side, the other side, and however you want to call it. Of course, the moon doesn't have a dark side as such, or a light side. It changes like on the Earth. But breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking. And it was fascinating to hear the astronauts talk about media impacts they could see as they were circling the moon, the bright flashes of media impacts on the moon, which makes me wonder, which never occurred to me before, maybe it occurred to you, that future moon bases would have to be protected from the rare but likely media impact. NASA and UFOs, just one of the interesting search criteria you can put into Trove at trove.nla.gov.au or the archive of your choice, because when you do that, you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. And wasn't it interesting to hear some of the funny comments left behind on the YouTube page of Australian Story, the Westall UFO event. And again, if you feel so inclined, you might want to go on there and leave a comment, either defending my point of view or calling me a goose. In fact, nobody did call me a goose. They called me all sorts of other very naughty names, but not a goose. Maybe they should have. Thank you to those people who support the Skeptic Zone via PayPal or Patreon. It does help pay the bills. It does help get the show out every week. And hello to all the new listeners out there who only discovered the show via my recent radio appearances and television appearances. Glad that you're listening. Coming up on next week's show, Woo Watch. We're going to be watching some woo. Well, not exactly. I went to visit Kate Thomas in her new studio, and we discuss Botox. Botox. Have you ever wondered or thought about getting Botox treatment? I haven't. Seriously. But Kate has. Find out more next week. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
It makes me wonder.
That's all?
That's all, thanks.
Yeah, well, they certainly put you in your place, Richard. That'll teach you to go on there with a black shirt. Although the other guy who seemed to be from UFO documentary, he was also wearing a black shirt.
There's something to be said about that, Maynard. Yes, well, wearing a black shirt gives you extra credibility on TV.
Okay, right, well, I must get one. Well, good luck, Richard. There you go.
Thanks, Maynard.
Thank you. It's the afro.